So, hey everyone, I want to welcome you to the Latino Male Experience in Higher Education with Mario Alvarado, who is one of our counselors. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Mario.
Alrighty. Well, thanks again, Lori, for the opportunity. Just like she said, I did this presentation a few years ago. So it's been quite some time. It was basically my master's project. And so a lot of love obviously went into it and a lot of hard work. And so it's nice to be able to have some fruit behind, the project versus just being it, one and done. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead. You'll hear a little bit more about it, but by all means, if there's a lot of information to cover, I'll be honest, it's a lot of so there's two parts of it. The first half is talking about, the different factors and stuff that relate to the Latino male college experience and why they don't necessarily always persist. And then the second half is dedicated to giving a little bit of tools that we might be able to use. And so we'll go ahead and jump in. And I can't really see the chat too much. So if you guys have anything, by all means, like I said, feel free to throw that in there. I might be able to look at it later, but just some background information really quick. Compared to all ethnic groups, right, in the California community college system, Latino male enrollment was the highest. And but on the flip side of that, post-secondary degree completion was significantly lower, right? Which is kind of like a what, like, how can that be, right? How can the highest population of students go in, right, but not be able to successfully come out with the, intended outcome? And so, the whole point of today is really just to identify or inform you all of different factors that affect them from attaining a post-secondary degree and just kind of share a little bit of some of those stories of how this, research that I got is reflective of experience of students here at Reedley College and then beyond, right? Because I mean, obviously, this is just more than just Reedley College students. I know some folks from different state center campuses, so welcome to you all as well. Just a little bit more background information behind the project. Again, Latinos largely select community college as a starting point in their higher educational journeys. And so I don't have the exact data in relation to why that is. That's a whole different project in itself, but I just got that information when I was doing this project. But again, this is important because, community college funding formulas reflect student success in addition to the amount of students enrolled, right? So it really just emphasizes the importance for not just Latino male students, but for all students to succeed. But again, this was just a large part of my project. And so two questions related to my research project. And so the first one was, what are the personal and cultural challenges affecting first generation Latino college students in their pursuit towards a higher education? So again, I mentioned earlier about the two parts of my presentation, and then the second part is what educational practices and strategies are most effective to use within Latino males who are currently pursuing a higher education at a community college. So there's five different variables that are broken that we kind of break them down into, which on the left there you have the name of like the theory, which I won't read the lengthiness of it. If you guys want the research, I can kind of, steer you to it. But these are the five variables that many Latino males kind of like the different categories that they fall under as to why they don't unfortunately persist in obtaining that higher education. And so I'm going to break them down one by one. And so, like I said, it's a lot of information gonna be thrown at you. And so if you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to unmute yourself at the time, or you can, throw something in the chat. So the first one is the pre-college variable. I'm going to adjust something really quick, which is heavily influenced by experiences that they have prior to getting to college, right? And so this variable pretty much highlighted how Latino males were more likely to persist towards a higher education if they were prepared academically in high school. So I put some logos there of some different like initiatives and programs and services that already exist around Reedley College and maybe even around different state center campuses. But, Trio Upper Bound is one, as well as our talent search. There's Avid, advanced placement, dual enrollment. So again, these are all different things that currently exist and what we mean when we say pre-college variables, right? And again, it also involves high school coursework and the grades that they earn. For myself, I actually was a part of a program called the Doctors Academy out at the high school that I attended. And so the nice thing about that program is they would take us to all these different campuses, right? UC, CSUs. But the very first time I remember stepping foot on a college campus was actually at Fresno City. And so when I stepped foot there, when my mom was taking a class there at the time, and I was like, I want to go there one day. Like I just wanted to go there. Like I didn't even know what it was, and I just wanted to go there for whatever reason. I just knew it provided me with some sort of opportunity, right? And it just kind of highlights the experience that many of our students also have, especially, being a rural campus. We have a lot of students who don't always get that opportunity, to step foot on a college campus and really see those opportunities that are out there. And I really get to see that heavily, as a career counselor today. There's a lot of students that they come in, they don't necessarily know what they want to do. They have an idea. And so my job is to really kind of poke them out a little, right? And ask them just questions about why they think, this career is a possibility or why is it not, right? So along with that, moving on to the demographic variable, this one, I kind of see it as like the whole thing of they don't know what they don't know, right? So Latino male students experience difficulties being first gen, right? And so they don't unfortunately have a big support system, and many of them rely on the following people that are in that little graph to aid in the college preparation process, whether that be, siblings, peers, relatives, or school support staff, right? And so navigating higher education, not just, well, both, high K-12 education as well as higher education is a challenge for them because their parents may not be able to provide that knowledge regarding college, right? And really ask them those deep, thought-provoking questions about what it is that they want to do and what is their why, which I'll talk a little bit about why that's important in a bit. Many of them also come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, right? And so they're less likely to have access to college prep curriculum, right? I mentioned some of the things that I was highlighting a little bit earlier, but again, not every student is participating in TRIO. Not every student does a advanced placement. Not every student, takes a dual enrollment course. And so those are just some of the things that, I want to emphasize with that. Along those lines, finances are also a major barrier that determine their persistence in higher education. And so one of the crazy things that I found in this part of the research was that, when you compare all ethnic groups, Latino students were tended to work while attending college at higher rates, right? And so they tend to seek part-time or full-time employment so that they can defray their costs. And so the reason why I thought that that was important to highlight is again to emphasize, how Reedley College in particular is a rural campus. And so you think about those students who live in those outlying areas, and so and how they have to find work, likely outside of the community college that they might be attending. So how much time does that take away from their studies, which I'll also talk about in a sec as well. But actually, that's this next slide. So, but again, as a result of working more, right, um, they also have to determine how much work they will take away from their work in order to study, right? So I see it kind of as a constant back and forth, and even myself, I had to go through it as well. I'll talk about it in a sec, but I'll just kind of keep going through these research points. The other thing is Latino culture tends to require males to financially contribute to the family, which again exerts a little bit more pressure on them, right? And I see this on a regular basis in the Career Center. We have students constantly come in, looking for work to be able to provide. And I even had a student recently. He came in and he's like, well, I'm looking for work, but he'd been so focused on school that he unfortunately didn't have a big like a lot of depth to his resume. And so it's like you gotta, get involved in some shape or form, whether it's volunteer, get involved in your community, if you go to church, do anything, but we gotta do some work to get this resume a little bit more depth to it so that you can get those opportunities, um, you know, whenever those opportunities come. The next one is environmental variable, and this one is where work and life balance is discussed and largely connects with finances and income status of the Latino male population. So that's really just the definition of it, but there is a few things that kind of go through it. Um, with this one, Latino males perceive this idea, and I find a lot of truth to this idea, and I'll explain why in a bit. But the idea that they highlighted in the research was you do not need college to be successful. And this was because they thought that this was because many Latino males saw other, male figures in their life that had hard labor jobs that paid entry level salaries, of professions that require a degree, right? Is this fair? No. Do we like it? No. But unfortunately, this is a very big reality for our Latino male student population. And so, again, that highlights the whole thing of if they're having to balance both work and student life, they're not really going to have that time to get involved in normal college activities. And we understand the importance of that, right? So that way they can get immersed and have that welcoming feeling of this is my college and I'm going to finish here to, get whatever opportunity that, college is offering me, right? And so the thing again I want to highlight here is emphasizing that unfortunately, a lot of students don't see the bigger picture, right? They don't see the bigger picture and long-term benefits of earning a degree. They might see like, hey, my friend has this brand new car and he has this job at, Amazon. And no, not to bash anyone who works at Amazon, but it's just the reality of many of our students working in specific areas, right? Where they're actually making a pretty decent income for like an 18, 19, 20-year-old. Um, but again, it makes the decision a little bit easier. We're like, well, I'm getting money now. If, you know, college isn't quite paying off for me now. So they really want to see that quick turnaround, but that's not always um, something that we see right away. It's something that they want to kind of stick out, right? And so that's why it's important for us to be able to kind of relate to those students, like just kind of keep going, keep going. Personally, I know I never went to got involved in a lot of college things and stuff like that. I would always go to school and um, go to class, go to work, go home. And I would never really get involved. And this was actually one of my biggest regrets in college. Every time I get students that come in and, again, similar to that student that I shared about earlier about having not a lot of depth with his resume, it's just like, get involved, get involved, get involved, please. So if there's any opportunity for you to share about opportunities for students to get involved, by all means, continue to encourage that. This next variable is the social cultural variable. And this is kind of it's this thing, it basically surrounds this concept called familismo, which is the overall strong attachment. There's a definition right there. The strong attachment and identification to immediate and or extended families, right? Because many Latinos have other family growing up with them, whether it be aunts, uncles, grandparents. We call them multi-generational households, right? And so the big thing with this is understanding that we have to be loyal, right? As Latino males, we have to be loyal to our family, kind of, or else, right? And I'll talk about a little bit why that's important in a bit. Um, but again, this is a representation of just kind of cultural values and how it's embodied by those things that you see there in the slide. But in a nutshell, let me kind of bring it to life. So let's just say, for example, I have a school project coming up. I'm taking a bunch of classes. I have a school project that I know is going to take away a little bit of time that I would normally be at home or contributing to the family. This basically highlights the importance that when we do that, when we unfortunately go out and to do these things that even though we know it's for our benefit and we explain to our family like, hey, I need to go do this, our family's like, well, why? Well, why? We need you here. We need you here. I need you to take care of, my little brother or my little, or, the little sister to be able to, so we can go to work, right? So it's like about flipping, taking that turn within the family. Like it's your turn to kind of step in and help us out so that we can all thrive, right? So that's the whole point behind this. So that's why in this slide, I share that it's both positive and negative. Positive in that, yes, it's great that we're, maintain this close-knit family, right? But the reality is that males tend to have this more provider slash breadwinner gender role to them. And so again, for me growing up, I would sometimes I'd be working on my computer, right? And some parents growing up, let's just say my dad was working outside on some house project, which I mean he still does. Um, he would go out and work on these projects, and then so I'd be working on my computer, and then my sometimes he'd come in or my mom, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you go help your dad?" And I'm like, "I'm working on something," and they're like, "Well, you can take a little bit of time to go help," and it's like, "No, I can't because this is due tomorrow, or I need to really study, right?" And that's why I remembered a lot of days where I would not even study at home, not because I couldn't study at home, but just because I'm like, if I study at home, I'm gonna feel so guilty because, you know, I have, I know I have these responsibilities at home, but I kind of have to, unfortunately ignore these responsibilities so that I can, succeed and, get whatever passing grade I was trying to get. But, and again, not every student has that privilege. I know for me, I feel like I had a lot of privilege when it came to that, but there's a lot of students who unfortunately don't get to experience that. And so the social cultural variable, I like this little graph because again, it quickly shows just who first generation Latino males are. They're again the providers of the family. They're expected to sacrifice their individual needs, and lastly, they're expected to maintain their family's healthy socioeconomic status, regardless of however they're contributing to that family, right? This one again is kind of important as well. Success is defined differently by Latinos, and right. And I tend to always ask students whenever they come to me, like, how do you define success? From Latino males, the idea of completing of higher education sometimes is seen as something that quote unquote white people do. And again, that's from the research that that was done. And it's very true because I find myself in a lot of different social circles where, if I have friends or family who, didn't go to college for whatever reason, didn't finish, I kind of feel like I kind of feel like an outsider, right? Um, and so uh, with this one, I wanted to highlight a student that I worked with recently. He was a student trying to earn his degree in criminology to be a police officer. And so he comes in to meet with me for, career counseling. He's like, I'm kind of undecided. Okay, great. And so we have this dialogue. And it wasn't so much that he was undecided, it was more that he didn't have a belief in himself that he can do it. He didn't have that, support system that I highlighted a little bit earlier to understand that, like, he's like, Mario, I don't have all these people like in the street that I live on. It's just kind of rough. And I feel like honestly, if I were to go into crim, it's like it's a scary thing because I live in this area that's just a little bit rough around the edges. And I'm like, it's a matter of me being able to support him while understanding his reality, but also trying to just kind of allowing him to make that decision. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that with this example that I showed there. Moving on to academic experiences. Um, Another factor again that contributed to the fortunate statistics is that Latino males oftentimes have difficulty with curriculum content, right? In high school, it's taught one way. College is taught in another different style, right? So they have difficulty adjusting to heavily lecture-based teaching style, and so lecture style teaching strategies lack those opportunities to engage in their learning, right? So in other words, sometimes, and I get it, it doesn't mean that that type of instruction is bad. It's just the reality of what our students face, and so they don't have a positive academic outlook if all they come into in college in their first year. Imagine all 4 classes that they're taking or 5 are all lecture heavy based. They don't get that sense of feeling that I belong, right? They want an opportunity to be able to engage with others, engage with their instructors in unique ways that they probably or hopefully would have experienced prior to getting to us in their K-12 experience. Um, Again, for academic experiences, again, just want to highlight that for them to persist in college, they have to be connected to the campus culture. And that's why I shared a little bit earlier about me personally not being able to get super involved in college, and why that was one of my biggest regrets. I always felt like I wanted to be able to do, go to these different events that I would only go if it was either extra credit or what have you, or being forced, right? But at the end of the day, it was those little opportunities that um, I did immerse myself in. The very few that I did, those really were really impactful for me. Um, I think this is the second to last one for academic experience, and then we jump into some ways in which we can kind of combat some of the things that I've already talked about. But with this one, it continues on the academic experience, but really highlights the faculty and student interactions, right? Positive faculty and student interactions, again, are shown to increase retention and persistence. That's pretty, I know it sounds pretty obvious, but it just kind of shows how as instructional and non-instructional faculty, we really do have this influence on our students on whether or not they're going to be able to persist from one semester to the next and earn their degree, right? Um, a lot of times how I see it with this is I showed you guys, let me see if I can jump back really quick. I don't normally jump back this much, but I wanted to kind of, this one right here. So this little one, the little graph right there, how I kind of see it as we as in both, again, instructional, non-instructional faculty, we have to be the ones who are essentially falling into that category of those students, or for the graph that you see there, right? And again, I'm not saying we're going to be like their siblings. We're not going to be related to them, but it's just understanding the role that we play for their own success, right? We are having that positive student faculty student interaction is what is going to allow them to really feel welcoming and a sense of belonging. Let me go ahead and jump over here. The last thing I wanted to highlight with this one is even looking back at my own college experience, I can distinctly remember, you know, probably a good handful of instructors who I really felt, even though I didn't necessarily interact with them a ton, because I just felt like they really did want the best for their students, and I saw that in them and the way that they taught. It positively impacted me to understand, like, this person cares. I may have not had a full-on interaction. I didn't go, I feel like I only went to office hours like twice in my 4 year or 5 years that I took to get my bachelor's degree. But even then, it showed the positive influence that instructors and counselors have on our students when they're able to see like, hey, this person cares. And it's, I mean, not to like toot my own horn, but I guess it's always nice, when a student kind of feels like, thanks, it's nice to, have people that we care about. It's like, that's what we want at the end of the day. And again, you kind of have to do that in your own role, whatever that may be. This one I can be a little bit touchy, I feel. Representation matters. When we say representation, whether it's a male figure in our in academia, whether that, be in administration, faculty. But with this, I wanted to highlight that while representation absolutely matters, there was a common misconception through the research that I found, and I really do find it to be true, that students should have support from faculty or staff that are from the same ethnic group. And the reason why I feel like it is true is because personally, earning my bachelor's degree, my quote unquote mentors were not, Latino males. I'm not saying like, oh, I had a terrible experience with that, any Latino male growing up. It's just, I never did that. And that was my experience, right? Again, I know every student's going to be a little bit different, but it just kind of highlights the importance that, you don't really have to be a Latino male to have a positive impact on a Latino male. It's just a matter of understanding all the different things that I'm kind of sharing about today and putting them into practice however you feel, right? Again, because my mentors in life, again, were not Latino male, but I still was always open to them, and they were the ones that are always pushing me and encouraging me. And so again, but at the end of the day, that's also kind of why I'm here today, right? Because, before this, I feel like there wasn't anything like this. And so for me to be able to share this is also, a cool thing itself to kind of bring it full circle. So, alrighty. So now we get to talk about the practices and strategies to use with our students, right? And so those are all of the categories there. Before I jump in, let me see, is there anything I should look at in the chat? Nope. Okay, cool. Just making sure. With this, though, it's just important to emphasize that one size or one shoe size doesn't fit all. And the one thing that I also found in my research, again, is the importance of highlighting that campus-wide retention efforts were the most effective whenever campus administrators or just anything in general was trying to come into fruition. Whenever the whole campus buys into whatever it is that, we're trying to, I guess, pull off or, be good at, it's always best if the whole campus kind of buys in. So keep that in mind while I go through each one of these different practices and strategies. So first off is culturally responsive teaching. So the definition is right there where, you recognize the importance of including a student's cultural identity throughout their educational journeys. And so this teaching strategy, it creates and incorporates communities of learners that validate, their presence on campus. And so I'm actually going to jump right into the next slide, which highlights it a little bit more about what it actually looks like. So again, curriculum is adapted towards the way in which a student's cultural identity impacts the course subject. For example, I know last year, English faculty, they selected Solito as the one book, one college, right? And so it kind of related to a lot of our student population, not just the Latino males, but it really just brings experiences to a space that they never have experienced before, right? Who'd ever thought? Like, I don't know if, personally for me going to college, I don't know if I would have thought going into college, it's like, oh, we're going to read this textbook on the experience of, of immigrants, right? Which I thought, is great, right? And so for, to be able to do that and bring that into practice, that's basically what that looks like, is when we say culturally responsive teaching, right? Is being able to utilize different material and being open to it to share with our students and see what they think about it, right? The other thing in relation to this is that, traditional forms of lecture like is substituted with group work. So you allow for learning communities to be formed, right? So I mentioned a little bit earlier about how lecture heavy instruction is not always well received by, our Latino male students. So when you're able to incorporate, for example, whatever question that you might be posing, right? And sometimes I know, well, let's just say we ask a question and we're waiting for students to kind of respond, and all you hear is crickets, right? One of the ways to combat that and for them to be able to share their ideas without them feeling like, oh, I'm going to be put on the spot, get them into groups, even if it's just like, okay, you four, you four, you four, you kind of, everyone's a little bit different how your classrooms are kind of structured, but I think of this as like think, pair, share, right? You give them a minute to think about whatever the question you might be posing in the class. You pair them up, whether it's in twos, threes, fours, fives, whatever that may be, and then allowing them to share in a group, right? And while you're sharing that in the group, you're, walking around, just kind of hearing what they say and stuff like that. And it's always neat because again, not only does that able to get them to be involved in the content and the curriculum, right? But then, oh shoot, I lost on my thought. That was a good point too. It was like my brain was running too fast. But in a nutshell, again, it's a really good practice that you can kind of put into practice. But again, it allows them to feel welcome, right? And allows to build a little bit more rapport with the students versus just again the instructor and the large group in the classroom. And again, I understand that there's limitations with this. Not everyone can incorporate this, but if you're able to infuse it here and there, even if it's like on day one, right? I mean, I know day one is obviously syllabus type stuff heavy, but it's just an example, right? Even if it's just like, all right, share whatever it is, give them a prompt to where they're from, doing that. And as you're walking around, then it's like you're learning more about all of your students without, having them come one by one or, them filling out the sheet, which you can still do and have them turn it in at the end. But it's just still kind of a cool way for them to kind of right away automatically get involved in that. Next one, faculty-student relationships. I talked a little bit about this already, but overall, again, faculty mentorship help Latino male students increase their overall self-efficacy and better define their academic goals. And so I always challenge folks to think about how you may have had a positive instructor in your college experience, right? And how they may have pushed you to think and define success for yourself, right? So the other point in that is that, faculty support and help inspire, encourage students to transfer to prestigious colleges. I think of it as we have to be able to support our students, but you also have to really be able to challenge them in an encouraging way, right? I'm really big on self-efficacy where students again are confident in their ability to pursue whatever it is that they want to pursue, but they're well aware of it and they also know when to come to you, right? It's not just I'm not really for where like a student is always, I always like really like encourage like here's where the answer is, right? But I'm telling you, and it's like, and I always tell the students like, I'm telling you this because I want you to be like self-sufficient in a way. You can always come to me for any questions, like, but I'm also going to point you in the right direction, right? I'm not necessarily going to, spoon feed it to you because at the end of the day, like you may not always have me here, right? For whatever reason, right? But that's just like a brief little example with that. Um, a few more points to highlight with this, again, is just to share that faculty, again, they train students on how to persist through adversity so that so they knew how to succeed in a more rigorous environment. This kind of shows and highlights um, how we have the opportunity to do that. Again, I shared that a little bit. I guess I shared that right now, just recently, at least in how I do it. But if you might be teaching a particular subject, it's more about pushing them, let's say, to do X amount of research, right? And that's if they want to, go that route, right? Not every student wants to go that route. Um, Again, faculty also provide strategies to understand why they struggle in order to get where they want, right? Why is that struggle important, right? Getting them to understand, like, unfortunately, struggling is a part of it, a part of where we want to be, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be in that boat forever, right? I'm not making you any giant promises, but it's just a matter of, you know, having that grit to to kind of push through those tough times of what makes, college, right? Again, just big on promoting self-efficacy. So I always say, successful students, they have high expectations. They can define success for themselves, and they seek out counseling services. So I pose this question again to folks in the room on how you can encourage students to define success for them. How many times have you asked a student what success means to them so that they know what it takes to get there, right? What does success mean? Does it mean for them graduating? Does it mean that they're going to earn a job? What exactly does that mean to them? Or does it mean transfer, right? It could really be different upon every student. So I really encourage you guys um, to really think about how you can do that in your different spaces that you're at, because again, you'd be surprised with how they define it. So that way, again, you can play that role in to getting them to where they want to be. Um, Here that just highlights again that even the most academically prepared Latino students likely have difficulty as adjusting to college life. So again, it really increases the need for us to evaluate all of our students' perceptions in the college environment, which is why again I shared a little bit about asking them what success means to them. I shared a little bit about this, or no, this is another student. But recently I met with a student from Reedley Middle College, and the funny or interesting thing with him when I was meeting with him, he's like, man, I'm in this pathway. It's got a lot of older guys, and I'm like the youngest one. This kid's like probably like 18, right? And so academically, he was prepared, right? Well prepared. Really Middle College is a great campus that, comes with a lot of academic strengths. But when it came to that being in that different environment where it's like now he's all of a sudden expected to um, fix all these different things. I think it was like aviation or something. He's fixing all these things and he's like, man, I struggle with that, but that's where they kind of help me. And where I help them is with all the math and stuff. So we kind of help each other. So it was like kind of cool to see that different little environment, but he's learning from them as they're learning from him. But I just wanted to kind of highlight that regardless of a student's academic experience before they get to us, it's important to evaluate what they perceive college as, like what does it mean for them. The other thing that we have on our campus, again, that really helps our Latino students is academic support programs. So again, they're usually the most widely used retention strategies, but in community college or college in general. And most academic support programs provide, academic tutoring, professional development, financial resources, and counselors who see them on a more regular basis, right? And so here at Reedley College, and I think I have my next slide, we have student support services, EOPS, but again, support programs really, they vary from institution, just depending on obviously their funding and who's overseeing it and what have you. But they really instill good academic habits, these support for students to succeed and increase their sense of belonging, right? Because now they're having to go to a physical space on campus where they feel like someone's kind of encouraging them, watching over them, what have you, right? So that's why I always encourage you know, all of us in community college and the college in general to be able to encourage students that if they qualify to go to those different programs and services so that they can, reap the benefits of them. But again, academic support programs, they increase student retention because again, they give them all that, what I just mentioned earlier, and increase that sense of belonging so that way that's uh, they're not feeling lonely, right? Like they're just going here and then like going to campus and leaving just like how I did, right? But sometimes when we have students that do that, they go to campus and they go home or go to campus work and home. Um, there is that sense of like, what am I doing, right? Is there anyone really keep being mindful of what I'm doing? And so that's why it's important. Similarly, there's also first year experience programs, which they provide opportunities there below. So again, they're very similar to academic support programs. So they allow, students to get acquainted with other college classmates, they become oriented with the college campus, build professional relationships and improve communication with faculty and staff. They might, some first year experience programs, have students take courses with peers to promote that, positive learning environment. And then lastly, counseling academic support to be, again, part of that learning community, which is vital to their success. And so here at Reedley College, we have, for example, CAMP. CAMP is an example, one of those programs. We also have many STEM, or I guess, I think it's one or two STEM cohorts that are designed kind of with some of these features, maybe not all, but it just has that intention behind it. With that, I think that's pretty much covers it because I did want to leave a little bit of time to for folks if you wanted to discuss. But again, at the end of the day, really, there's a lot of factors that influence their students call or their retention and completion. Um, those are all the five that I covered today, and that's why I think it's crucial to understand, to have a holistic understanding of why they're here, right? And again, a lot of some might be in CTE programs, some have an intention to transfer, some don't intend to transfer, right? There's a lot of layers to us as Latino males. And so, but like I said, this is opportunity for you all to kind of throw in the chat, or if you have any questions. I might not be able to answer them all, but it's just an open time for discussion or summary if you guys have any thoughts, questions, or concerns. All right, let me open up my chat.
There is a chat. Do you think outreach initiatives that would include their families' benefits, such as campus visits or program meetings? We have a little bit of that, don't we, Mario?
Yeah, and a lot of that starts again before they get to us. Camp, I know, does a lot of that family type stuff. I see Hema on here. Hema, I'm gonna put you on the spot if you can unmute yourself because I know you have a lot of experience with camp, but
Can you guys hear me?
camp is very designed with that intent. Again, I'm not a camp expert, but I just know that a camp is an example of that. Hema, do you want to share a little bit?
Can you
If
guys?
you, I can, yeah.
Can you speak up a little bit, Hema?
Yeah, I was putting my headphones. Can you guys hear me now better?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds good. So yes, camp. I used to work at Fresno State Camp for many years. I have like 10 years of experience at Fresno State with this program. And the benefit of basically creating those outreach initiatives is for us to expose families prior to the student entering the college, to expose them to the college environment, for them to know what college is all about. There could be different ways through conferences, to campus tours, through other type of meetings where they can actually be introduced to the college system, especially because a lot of our families coming from a migrant background have never been exposed to college, just like probably some of us when we were coming in into college, our parents didn't have any type of experience with a college environment. That's kind of like the main purpose for camp. Camp is supposed to be kind of like the home away from home type of situation for students. They're supposed to be able to feel connected, to feel like a place where they belong and they can receive all the different services. And that's kind of like the main priority for the staff to do as well, to kind of like instill that to the families of the students that are going to be coming in, so they know to let their students come in into the college, for them to know that their students are going to be safe, that their students going to have a place to go, that the students are going to have that connection. So they have different ways to achieve this. It could even be, like I said, through conferences, meetings, or just bringing them in into campus. Does that answer your guys' question?
That does. Thank you, Hema. I know I put you on the spot.
It's okay. Don't worry.
But yeah, exactly what Hema said. I mean, here on our campus at Reedley, we have, their Parents as Partners conference coming up in, I think, a couple of weeks or a few weeks. That's an example of outreach, right? Just bringing families in the community onto our campus. And I know every campus, in State Center works a little bit differently on how they incorporate that. But that's I would say for folks in the room that's where you can get involved, whether it's volunteering for a couple of hours of your day and um, seeing that for yourself, because I think it's important for all of us to become a part of that, right? And so, but yeah, that's a good question. Anything else from anyone? You feel free to unmute or um, again type in the chat
Go
whatever you
ahead,
feel.
Rebecca.
Um, Thank you for presenting this. It's so much information. I think I attended when you and Luis presented before. And ESL, it is not uncommon to have only women, like a class of 25 students, and they're all female. And we have tried to have classes at various lengths, modalities, locations, time of day, etc. And so I think that it might benefit me if I can get recommendations from you of the articles that you read for this presentation that might be related to our program that you think would benefit us, because I took the data literacy class and I was really trying to look at the male enrollment in ESL. And I think I narrowed it down to the students who did enroll had flexible work schedules. Like they were a barber and then they could schedule their clients, for example, at a time that worked for them. So if you have any insights or any of the male students that you've assisted that came through our program, that could help us, because we've also tried to have male ambassadors help with ESL outreach, etc. So any advice that you have specifically for ESL is appreciated.
I might have some thoughts, so I'll definitely be reaching
Perfect.
out to you, Rebecca. We can definitely chat about some
Okay.
thoughts that I might have.
Okay, thank you, Mario. Appreciate it.
Of course. Anything else?
Do you feel, I mean, well, I experienced the same thing Rebecca did years and years ago before ESL took or I don't want to say took over, but offered some of the same classes we did in English at the ESL levels where it was just women. And I didn't really think about that until Rebecca mentioned that. And now in our English classes, like I feel like sometimes I have classes that are more male than female, and it's all just different mixtures. Do you feel like some of these same things apply to women too? I mean, it seems like there's some differences at the ESL level, which is really interesting and I hadn't really thought about. But then maybe maybe women have different obligations put on them, or I don't know, just
Absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't want to speak for all. I mean, I do have 5 sisters, but and I don't want to put anyone else on the spot either, but I will definitely say that there is some relation with a lot of the information that I shared and how it applies to Latinas, who live in our areas as well. Because in some instances, it's like the male goes to work and the woman is the, let's just say, quote unquote, homemaker, right? And so when does the woman then when is she able to go out and pursue whatever aspirations that she might have for herself, right? And so again, that's just one brief example, but there's a lot of I would definitely say that there's a lot of overlap with this.
how as faculty do we handle or help when students say, because I've had this many times, oh, I had to pick up a sibling or a niece or whatever, a family member. I had to take my grandma to the doctor's appointment. I had to take my mom to the doctor's, like those family obligations that you were kind of mentioning. How as teachers can we help students with those, with, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I feel like, well, these are things we have to juggle, but maybe they don't know how, like you went and studied somewhere else,
Right.
but some of these students don't know how to juggle that. So how can we help them? Should we help them? Like, what should we say to them?
I
And as
think at the very minimum, extending the hand is really our role, to be able to extend the hand and say, hey, here are these X resources, and allowing the student to be able to utilize them if they wish. And sometimes they can't just because they can't, right? But I think when you go out of your way and extend that hand, it does play a role in how they perceive us and higher education, because now all of a sudden we care for them, right? Because them coming in, they're like, I'm gonna go in, yeah, they care not so much, but if you at least go out of your way to do that, it's like good, because again, I mean, I've run into this issue too in the classroom where it's like, I've got this going on, I've got this going on, and it's a constant, every week, every assignment, and I'm willing to work with them, but at the end of the day, the student does have to, do their part, right? We can bend over backwards for them, but it's a matter of them doing it in a way that allows them to do so. But I will say at least extending that hand goes a long way. I feel like at the very minimum, we owe that to them. I mean, obviously, like I said, we can't offer to like take care of their kids or something like that, right? There's only so much that we can do.
right.
That's all. I'll let anyone else. Hema, you got your hand raised. Feel free to chime in.
And Estrella had her hand raised too, and I don't know
Oh,
if I
Estrella,
pronounced her
sorry.
name right.
Estrella, we'll go for you first.
Sorry, this is Erica. My
Oh,
student
Erica.
assistant is also listening. So just wanted to chime in into what Mario was saying, and totally agree with also Rebecca's statement of how we see a lot of ESL students that are mothers that come to us and tell us, now that my kids are grown and my husband is at work, now it's my time to come and get educated. It's time for me to learn English now. So I do hear that very, very often. I just heard that story this morning. And Lori, just going with you were saying, how can professors support our students? Many of our students, drop off their kids in the morning and they're running to school. So I always tell them, make sure that you speak to the professors, let them know that you're running late because you're dropping off your kids. So I think that's the way that professors can support our students, just being flexible and just allowing them to get to class whenever they can, right?
Good points. Thank you, Erica.
Of course.
Hema.
I was just gonna go based on what you were discussing about providing a hand to the student and coming from a male-oriented pathway. Literally, I'm just coming. That's why you like got me off guard when you asked for my expertise, because I was just coming from a class presentation. My pathway mainly is male-oriented, and that extending the hand is very crucial with these students, because you really have to walk them through processes in order for them to go even to declare a major, to declare their certificates, to declare things like that. And I'm a mom of three boys, so I guess I'm okay by saying what I'm going to say now. Uh, I feel like guys are, they look like they're the strong gender. They look like they're gonna be able to be more independent. They look like, they got it all. They tend to, I tend to perceive that from them, but at the same time, it's not. They need the help. They need us to walk them through things. They need us to support them in any other ways. And I feel like a lot of times, just because they stay quiet, that doesn't mean that they don't need the help. And I see a lot of that on my pathway.
Those
Just
are
wanted
good
to share that.
points. No, for sure. Thank you, Hema.
If I may add also, I think that it's really important also as faculty to really, especially for our male students, obviously, to validate them, to really validate them. Like really, if you, whatever assignments it is that you're providing to them, obviously you're reading, their assignments, you should be able to read a little bit about their personalities. And I think it's important that you reinforce them, encourage them about being here on campus by letting them know, hey, I read a little bit about you, not necessarily being so obvious in that classroom room, like, because of course that would be a breach of confidentiality, but letting them know with general comments, and they know students are smart. When you know that a comment is being sent in class and it's kind of like, very general, but with certain points, the person right away gets it, And I think that male students catch on to that. And I can tell you from experience also, being the youngest of 10 in my family and having brothers, they, for the most part, they tend to have that also like caring responsibility, a caring aspect of themselves, and also that what do you call it, like an obligation to like help the younger ones, right? And especially having that male trait of like, I need to provide, I need to be working, I think that by the fact that if we encourage them to be here, we see them, we hear their voices, their assignments, to whatever it is that they're writing or they're completing, and we encourage them, they will feel validated. They will feel like that they do belong here on campus. And then the second point, and I can go on and give you some examples, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. But the other point that I wanted to make too is, as faculty, I think that we also need to teach them and encourage them that it's okay to ask for help. Like, I think it was Lori or Rebecca was saying about, like, you know, a lot of times they have responsibilities. I think we all have responsibilities, right? But if we really look back to our college years, some of us that came from certain cultures, we needed to help out in the family with either by working or providing. So nowadays, I can just, you know, looking back 20 years ago when I was in college, you know, there was a big need. I imagine nowadays with the economy the way it is, a lot of students, sometimes it's not that they feel like they don't belong here, but a lot of times they feel like they need to be doing something else, hands-on and providing, because there is a need. But I think that it's okay to teach them, or at least remind them, you know what, if you have to take one class, it's okay. But don't forget about yourself. It's okay to be a little selfish. I remember that comment was said to me when I was in college. It's okay to be a little selfish, and not in a negative way, but in a positive way. Look at how much you can gain from your college education. And if you feel like you're providing right now, how much more will you be able to provide once you get that education? That's just a thought.
Thank you, Susana.
I-
All good points.
I love that, Susanna. One thing that I find challenging sometimes is that I think students are pushed to have like a full load. Because I definitely have had students, both female and male, who are like, my family wants me to work. And they get so much pressure on them to work that then they just, you know, drop out of school because they can't handle both, you know. And I know a lot of them are working, you know, full-time jobs, and that, you know, even a part-time job and a full-time school schedule can be difficult with other obligations. But I love that, just like the idea of, you know, maybe we can make it okay, like if you have to work, it's okay just to take one class or two classes or something. But then sometimes I know there's like financial aid issues and other issues with that. So I think sometimes it can be really complicated for the student and easier, you know, to drop out. Although I love that idea of, you know, just take one class, you know, and stuff. And I try and help them, you know, talk to them about that. Or sometimes I look at their schedules, like, I don't think I could do this schedule. Like, it's a really hard schedule. So, but there is a lot of pressure on students.
Anyone else? Just checking in on the time.
Great talk, Mario.
Oh, thank you. No, and that's what I love about this whole thing, because I mean, presenting this information obviously is great, but I also like ending it with you know, open discussion, because I feel like that's where we also learn and everyone shares their different experiences, you know, however it was applied to them. I mean, just because, like I said, I said it before, you don't have to be a Latino male to understand or to be have that impactful thing, right? You mentioned earlier about, you know, validating our students. I taught an online class, was it last fall, fully online, never saw the students other than their, you know, picture on Canvas. And I try my best to do comments here and there, and, you know, sometimes it's just like, ah, shoot, you know, this is the one assignment I'm just gonna provide the points based on the rubric, and I have to move on because there's still more work to do. But so many students really love, like, when I comment, they're like, it's like they got that validation, or like they're doing a good job, right? And so I always try to infuse the, you know, good job, or whatever, what have you. Ruby, go ahead.
Hi, Mario. You made me think right now when you were talking about, you know, teaching online, and that's what I do. And yes, it's a challenge when you just see their picture. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is any strategies that you can think of or that anybody else has used in terms of normalizing seeking out tutorial services or even seeking out assistance from DSPS for your online students, in particular the males, where their pride might be hurt by broaching that subject.
So you're asking, like, how do we approach, or like,
Yeah, in
give
the
them
online
resources?
environment, have you come across any strategies, or has anybody in the room come across any strategies? Because I know in person, that's, you know, not as difficult to
Right.
deal with, but in the online environment, it seems to be a little bit more challenging because sorry, it's noisy over here.
It's okay.
You're having to rely on chats and on email, and, you know, they're not going to call you, and they're, you know, not taking you up on the Zoom, and, you know, it's just really challenging.
I think that's what we mean too about extending the hand, right? Again, we can, what's that one phrase? Leading, I don't want to say like a horse to water type of thing, but we can't like have them drink it. I'm pretty sure you do it as well, and infusing stuff into Canvas where you're just giving it to the whole class population of here's their, all these resources that are available to you. But again, I think sometimes it's a matter of explaining it in a way in writing, which is not always easy to say, like, here's why I want you to do, I want like to encourage you to go out and seek these resources. But um, yeah, that one's always a tough one because I feel like I usually can get students to seek out a resource if I have that rapport. And I think that's what it comes down to. Are we building that rapport with students, whether it be in-person environment or online environment, to where they trust us to go to that resource if we believe that they need that, whatever that is, right? So that would be my 2 cents on it. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
I think it's really hard sometimes, even in a face-to-face class. I have students who sometimes maybe got some, maybe they were special ed in high school or and they got help, and now they want to come to college and do it alone and prove that they don't need tutoring or extra help. I run across that all the time, and then at the end of the semester they say, yeah, I wish I'd gotten tutoring, and even in online classes, the Debrovka, like for English, gives us embedded tutors, and so they're emailing students constantly. And if I can sometimes Zoom with a student, or just before this, I took a student to the Reading Writing Center and had him sign up with me standing there. I know he'll sign up. He's an athlete too, so I know he'll get his coach and he has other support. But that is just first semester students. I think that's the hardest thing, is to get them to know, like, you don't have to do this alone. We're here to
Right.
help you in so many ways.
Yeah, it's a mixture of pride, but also I really want to try to do this on my own. And I've had my share of experiences do that, and I'm just like, all right, I gotta let you do it. I mean, I can't stop you, but I'm also here for it, here for you whenever you need it. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
just adding to that, Lori,
Oh,
what you're
sorry.
bringing up, I'm teaching short term, 9 weeks, and we're going to, we're gonna have a proliferation of those courses, right? So in the 9-week sections, you have less time to build that rapport. So just food for thought for everybody. That's even more of a challenge. That's all I'll say.
Sure. Thank you, Ruby. And we got Taylor, and then I think that'll be the last comment because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Go ahead, Taylor.
Hi, thank you, Mario. This stuff was super informational. I feel like even though, right, I'm Latina, like men, it's a whole different thing. And then if you're, depending on if you're older or younger sibling, like sometimes you're the one like shoving your siblings to go to college and to persist, and then sometimes you're the one having to figure it out on your own. I do like with the DSPS stuff, the idea, especially if it's online, just send out the information to all the students, like an announcement. Here's the information. Then you could even go in. Sometimes I'll send students when I'm teaching a class, I'll go by grade low to high, just so I can always see who I need to like focus on a little more. And you can also send emails to the students who maybe don't have at least a 60% or something. And if you do notice these couple of students in that list maybe might benefit from tutorial services or DSPS services, point them back to that announcement. Like, hey, if you saw that announcement I sent out last week, this might be beneficial for you. I can see that you really care about the classwork and that you're really trying, but I just want to make sure you don't fall behind. And then sometimes too, I just kind of try to relate to the student. Like, I see that you're not doing good in your bio class. I didn't either. I had to go to tutoring to get a C. And I don't want you to have to take it again and waste your time and all this stuff. So maybe use those supports.
Thank you, Taylor. All
Thank
right, we're at the
you.
2 o'clock mark, so I guess we can maybe stop sharing or stop recording. But if you guys have any other questions, comments, concerns, I'll hang around for a little bit, but otherwise, you guys know where to find me on campus. If not, that's my email. I know we can totally share it out, or you guys can take a picture, whatever you guys feel. But thank you guys for attending today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Mario. This is, I think, a really important subject, and there's so much to go into. And I will stop recording, and then if anyone has other comments, they can do that.